We were never really separate. We just believe that we're separate. All right, so um, pardon the video quality. My, I guess you could, yeah, it is it is kind of like a personal concern, but why? One of the reasons why there is racism. I mean, besides the whole, for those who are already aware of this, for those who already have sort of basically have been on their awakening journey, that the reason why there's racism, or one reason why, one thing I can think of is, again, besides the ego thing, being right, having fear, basically all that fear-based stuff, right? Separation, separation, separation is one thing that I find it's tied to that. And this is based only on, bear in mind, my personal observation and experience, and also for myself, is accent. There's like when, how is accents related to racism? Well, think about it. Why do people get turned off by others? Well, specifically because it's not familiar. Yes, it's all rooted in the ego, but there's this sort of a layer on it. And really what that layer is, at least for me, based as a language teacher, um, is having accents. Now, for those who probably don't know this, but the reason why they don't probably realize is because they haven't been able to sense it in their bodies. For me, I sense this reaction that I have, this reactivity that I have with when I talk to people and they have an accent. All of a sudden, it's like, oh, it's just different, right? But I think for me, it's tied a lot to my personal experience with, um, I guess, I don't know what it is. I feel like it's tied a lot to my background is like being, you know, people call Asian, whatever. um, to me, that's just not the point. The point is, why do I feel that? Because it's tied to like my inner child stuff. So again, it's all ego stuff because it's like as a child, I started associating um, lack of support, and called inconsistent presence, or I guess my parents not being there, you know, and so I kind of associated that with a lot of things that are Asians, very passive, very, so I tend to react to accents that are like more like, there's this sort of like people who tend to have this tendency to behave inconsistent. Either they're not passive, they're not aggressive, but kind of in between. And that's kind of tied to my own thing. So, but at the same time, you would have to agree that there's a reason why there are people like, even like myself, who do react to accents, not particularly just accents themselves, but accent in general, like that's tied to their own personal experience. I hope that makes sense. So, for example, if you grew up in a family that um, was, I guess you can say, like myself, where they weren't there, or maybe the opposites, like actual opposites. So, like maybe they were too, like they're too controlling, too smothering, and all this. You'll tend to associate that subconsciously with what you want, what your tend to your experiences. So, let's say maybe if your parents weren't there, or rather the opposite, sorry, they were completely there, and they're just always there in your face and kind of really controlling, telling you what to do, how to. So there's a part of you that will associate that, I guess, that culture behind their behavior, their certain way of talking, maybe because of them, maybe part of their, but could be their skin color as well. I don't know. But there, it depends on your personal experience, depending on the layers of experiences that you have. It could be tied to that. It could be tied to, you don't have to believe what I say because it's your own personal experience, right? But from what I've seen, besides all this stuff, like these factors to why there's racism, or at least this being one of the factors to why there's racism, is because um, accents. And when I say accent, I don't mean like, because there's an accent and then there's an accent. Okay, what does that mean? So an accent is just an accent that everyone has. Everyone has an accent. Dialects, people call them, refer to them as dialects, but it's not really a dialect. An accent is an accent because you have a different one, maybe because of your dialect, or maybe because of your subdialect. Like for example, in Canada, we have Albertan English, and then there's the West Coast English sort of stuff, and then there's the or Prairie English is where I'm coming from. There's Prairie English, and then there's like the other types of English in Canada, let alone Canadian English, right? Not to really put them in a box, but that's what people see. That's what's been labeled also by the linguistic community, like these regions of like here, 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 here. That's not the point of this video. The point is that because of these so-called accents, whether it's from a dialect or you just have an accent, there's that. But then there's also the accent where that stems a lot from this sort of experience and upbringing where you were not able to pick up the, I guess, whatever region you're in. Okay, hold on. Let me explain this. So let's say you move to a different place. Like move to a country of your target language, right? You move there. Let's say you move to, I don't know, some parts of Germany or something like that. Maybe northern part of Germany. That has a different accent, also with different dialects there. Even if you were there and you come from a different culture, if you didn't pick up the accents from there, um, that's that's one of the things. That's one thing where you just didn't pick it up. But there's another one where there's a part of your experience that kind of was a lot of it was based on personal choice. And the choice also stems from personal, I guess, fears that it's like, oh, I don't want to be with these people because I feel insecure about my own thing. And that adds a layer and a layer and a layer and a layer. That's my experience. Like, for example, I'll give you a perfect example. My parents, they still have this accent. They've been in Canada for over 30, 40 something years, and they still have an accent. And it's not because they have an accent, meaning like it's just they can't pick up the sounds. It's because of their exposure, right? I have never seen them hang out with Canadians like who were born here. They only hang out with other Filipinos. And even if you confront them about it, and even if it's not confrontational, they'll make this rationale, I guess, where they will say, "Well, I have friends that are like that, but are they friends? Do you actually hang out with them? Do you like? Is it constant? Were you exposed to that? Was it constant exposure? Right? Was it happening all the time? Was it no? I've never seen them do that. The only people that I've seen them constantly hang out with is their own kind, right? So that in turn spread within their little boxes, this little collective that they have. They just share all this accent, this whatever it is they pick up. That's where they're getting most of their things. So how does this relate to racism? You're probably wondering, like, what the heck does this have to do with racism? Blah, 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 blah. Well, first of all, let's go back to why we have accents in the first place. Sometimes we wonder, like, why we have an accent? Why do we have an accent? I can't pick it up. Because the ego wants to separate all the time. The ego wants to be right. The ego wants to be separate. The ego is always in fear of its own self, its own identity, that this form is it, right? Why do you think children are good at languages? Not just picking up accents, not just the grammar stuff, not just any of these things. Like they absorb everything. Why is that? Because they're moldable. When I say moldable, I don't mean necessarily like for the sake of like I'm going to mold you from in my own image. No, I mean, well, there's that other factor, but that's for another time. But what I mean is like they're very fluid, they're flowing with nature, just as it is. And a lot of adults I've seen time and time again, I'm not sure about now, but I think it's changing, especially with the older adults, like the older generations. Call it Gen what, Gen X or even older, baby boomers, whatever. The point is, I've seen a lot in my own experience, again, my own experience, okay, let me clarify that, that, They don't want to go beyond their own comfort zone because they're afraid of being judged. People don't want to be reminded of mistakes. Why? Because of the belief that there are mistakes in the first place, as if there's only opposites. Again, it's the ego, right? It's all like, it has to be only right this way. And there's a separation. It's like, no, bad is it. Mistakes equals bad. Mistakes means like I'm going to get disciplined. Mistakes means I'm not going to survive. Therefore, I want to latch on to what will make me survive and go with the status quo, which is the good and pure and only good and 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 good. Right? You see the cycle there? You see the cycle there? For thousands of years, it's been like that. You see how destructive that is? If you really go through it and you really process it and you go through the things yourself, only you know what is right for you, to be honest, right? In my experience, accents are tied directly to that because accents reveal imperfections. Whether someone triggers it in you or whether you get triggered by it through observation of something else. Someone makes a video like it's I don't know, it could be commentary or it's like something like this or whatever, or someone does an accent of the culture. Let's say someone does a French accent, and it triggers you. It's like, oh shoot, but really what that's triggering is a reminder for you to see what is it that I have that I'm insecure about. Now it's one thing to here's the other part. It's one thing to be triggered by something like an accent, and it's another thing to say um, that I'm going to just accept that I have an accent. And it's another thing to say that and ask yourself, do I work on this accent? The answer, in my experience, is none of those. You just be with it what it is, and then you allow for it to be like, okay, so I have an accent. And not to say that you don't accept the accent. I'm just saying that acceptance doesn't come from saying I accept it in here. It comes from being with it, being with the pain, being with the trigger, being with that pain and the suffering. Even if you're not suffering, doesn't matter. You accept it as it is. And I would suggest, this is my thing, I'm not suggesting anything at all, to be honest, but in my experience, it comes down to that shadow stuff. Call it shadow work, whatever you want. It's not about the labels, right? Because this is a shadow of perfectionism that we have to reach a goal. We have to go through, say, oh, I have to go here. I have to attain something that's unattainable. People think perfection is attainable because I'm going to be at C2 level by the time I'm done this year. So that's perfection to me. And then they realize after that, holy crap, I can't speak with native speakers. And then it brings up the insecurity because the insecurities come up again. It's just like, oh my goodness, I'm not perfect. Oh my God, I have this. And then there's another layer to this. For people who refuse to face their pain, for people to refuse there's a reason why we are awakening. There's a reason why we're being brought these things, is to come to terms with, like, it's not even coming to terms with anything. It's seeing that it's like, oh, where is that pain coming from? You see how it's all tied together? I don't know if you see it, but I see it. So racism is I guess you can call it a byproduct of a reaction to someone's own lack and mistake as your own lack and mistake. But if we don't bring awareness to it, we will not heal it. If we don't bring awareness to that, I mean, this is such a little thing. People think it's like, well, an accent is an accent. Okay, sure, if you live in the United States. Okay, sure, if you live in Canada. Okay, is there people who have accents? Okay, great. I accept that. But you can't deny that there's some part of you inside that's going like, I don't understand what they're saying. And if we don't understand what they're saying, that triggers also another layer of something else. The whole like, I don't understand, so therefore I don't know, therefore it makes me feel insecure. Therefore it's literally the word insecure just also feel like I don't know, meaning like I don't know what's ahead. It's scary, right? As humans, we're very obsessed, and this is from my coach. He said this, I think verbatim, is Aaron. For those who know Aaron Dowdy, he said something like, what was it he said? What were his words? He said that we as humans are obsessed with maintaining security or something like that. But the point is that we want to be secure, right? So this idea of perfectionism is tied to that. And for those who know something about the age of Pisces, that's what it was before. For about 2,000 years, that's what we went through. Imagine what kind of brainwashing we went through, right? This whole this for those who don't know astrology, that age of Pisces is a symbolism of what we went through as humans, as a collective, that we had to go through idealistic beliefs, idealistic action, things that we had to do that had to be. It was all rooted in idealism, a certain type of perfection. It's tied to the shadow of Virgo, which is also perfection. That is the shadow of that, right? So perfectionism, belief, or perfectionism belief. Um, it's all tied to that. The point is not about, we're not here to talk about the age of Pisces. We're talking about the fact that as humans, we experienced for the past 2,000 years at least that things had to be a certain way. I mean, go back to the other ages too. Before that was the age of Aries, age of Taurus, age of Gemini, age of Cancer, age of Leo. So it all ties back to those times when we started realizing, oh, we have an ego, therefore I'm special, therefore I'm so special. Oh, I'm fucking better than you. I must separate from you because I'm better than you. Or the opposite, I'm worse than you. When in fact, it's like that's not how it is. So you see how it's all tied to this, right? I mean, I'm going to tie it even further so that you kind of hopefully get it. But if you don't, that's totally fine. Um, so with the fact that there's racism and there's accents and the age of Pisces and all that stuff, how it all ties together is basically we've come to this sort of we've been in this sort of brainwashed mode, not in the sense necessarily that there was intentional brainwashing, although there was, um, that we have this sort of like idea and belief embedded in our psyche as a collective and individual that things must be also given just to us. We have to wait for the apple to fall off the apple tree. We have to wait for a savior. We have to wait for someone to do things for us. That in turn led to the belief of we have to wait for someone to help us. We have to wait for someone to correct us, let alone we have to have corrections, that as there is a correction needed. Because if there's no corrections, there's no perfection. If there's no perfection, then we cannot live an idealized life. Then we go to hell. You see what I mean? Separation. You see that? It's all tied, right? I have an accent. Let me summarize that even more. I have an accent, or the person has an accent. Oh, I don't want to be. I'm triggered by that. I'm triggered by my own accent. I'm triggered by their accent. Either way, it goes both ways. That it's like, I'm triggered by that because I don't want to be triggered. Therefore, it's wrong because having an accent is wrong. Having an accent is so bad. Having an accent is something that will make me not be part of the crowd. So I want to be part of the crowd because I want to go to heaven, because I want to go to heaven. So therefore, I must correct it. I must correct them, and they have to correct me. Therefore, we have to have an accent. But having an accent is, you see what I mean right there. That's Freudian slip, right? So it's like, therefore, we must not have an accent. We must be perfect. You must be, um, it's just, you see what I mean? I'm going in circles here, right? So the point is that that's that's really what it is. So how do we solve this? First of all, there's no need to solve anything. There really isn't. It all comes down to the awareness of having, first of all, an accent, and allowing for inspiration to guide you. How does this tie into what I'm trying to say now? I have always exposed myself to languages just in the background. I let music, radio, podcasts play in the background. When I say background, I don't necessarily mean literal. Not everything is literal in life, right? So I played in the background. Okay. Either I'm listening to like the sounds in the background, I have like podcasts playing or music, whatever it is. Anything that feels inspiring, anything that kind of makes me feel like, ooh, what's this sound? Because for me, it's about sounds. It's like, ooh, I hear it. It doesn't may not necessarily work for you, but I do it. You can try that if you want. If it's something that adds to a bit of fun to you, fine. A layer of fun will actually help because fun is what children do. What are children good at? One of the things they're good at? Languages. And why are they good at it? Because they flow, they absorb, they're moldable, meaning they're flexible, they're open hearted. You see how it ties together? So, anyway, so music, podcast, sounds in the language, in your target language. I just let it play in the background. And whether or not you necessarily pick up the accent, it's not really the point. The point is that adds to the layer of fun. For me, how I add the layer to the fun, here's where it gets kind of, for me, it gets good. Um, I allow for the sound to play in the background. And then I don't necessarily do this on purpose, but I kind of feel like it helps me imagine as if I were somewhere else, right? I use imagination. Imagination is a wonderful gift. Imagination is a wonderful skill. We all have imagination. You don't necessarily have to see it through your eyes or closing your eyes in your eye's mind, your mind's eye, right? It's not necessarily through that. Imagination is like this feeling of like, what if? Okay. It's like a sense of adventure, a sense of like, you don't have to necessarily go anywhere. You could just use your imagination, right? So I imagine I'm somewhere else, for example, right? That's what I do all the time. That has helped me with accents. I mean, yes, I have this so-called, people say it's a gift, but either way, it doesn't matter what you call it. I have the skill, gift, past life, ability, whatever, it doesn't matter. That when I hear sound, I hear it as it is. I don't know, because to me, music resonates it resonates with me. I've been a musician for over whatever decades, right? So that means that I'm open to the sounds. You can do that too. When you listen to music all the time, you hear it, right? So, but really the key to this layer to this key is to allow for things to be as they are with curiosity, with joy, with acceptance, and childlikeness. It all goes back down to that. It'll help heal any other triggers you may have when you're open to it. When you're open to also being vulnerable, there's the key. Children are also vulnerable. But we think of vulnerability as weak, right? We think of vulnerability as also probably tied to waste of time. Why would I waste my time? Because if you believe that it's a waste of time to be joyful from your heart, then that's the belief you're going to carry throughout the whole process. That means that you're going to carry through that whole process that it's like, I don't have time, so I just have to make time. And it becomes this routine thing. Okay, so I'm just gonna do what Jose does. Like he's gonna listen to radio, and you make it a routine. It's like, where's the fun? If it's not fun, don't do it. You don't need to do it constantly like I do either. It's just one of my tools, one of the ways I do things. Right? So again, I let things play in the background. I let it happen. I let it happen not when I'm thinking in the language that I'm set in, which is English. Like there's a reason why it kind of ties into what I've been saying before in previous videos, that when it comes to mm, like a line, like what do you call this? When it comes to, sorry, I lost my train of thought here. Let me backtrack a little bit. So I let it play in the background, but I don't do it while I'm thinking in English or processing things in English, speaking, listening, doing things, whatever it is, communicating, whatever it is, in English. The reason for that is because it's not going to set through, because the conscious part of the brain, which is where the science comes in, the conscious part of the brain is busy taking over the whole process. It kind of acts as a door. It's kind of a door. It blocks anything else and it stays within that area. So what's happening is that you're only hearing the sounds, but it's not sinking into the subconscious. Even if it doesn't go completely to the subconscious, when we're not having fun, it's really not going to go there because we're thinking, right? The brain just takes over. This is what you call the conscious part of the brain, which is around this front part of the brain, the frontal cortex or whatever it's called. But that's what it is. Experiment for yourself. If you're in the awakening process and you love languages, go through it. You'll notice that try this exercise. If you try to work out, okay, let's say you're doing push-ups, right? Try to count in the target language of your choice, whatever it is. Could be one or two or three, whatever. Try one for now. Then try doing push-ups. The moment it starts getting heavier, notice what language it switches to. You'll notice it's switched to the one you're most comfortable with. We're not talking about fluency. Comfortable, meaning like it's automatic. That's because it's embedded in the subconscious exactly where that familiarity of that language comes through. This is my experience. Sometimes I'll count in Slovak. Right? I go jeden, dva, tri, čtyři, pět, šest, sedm, osm, devět. See, that sounds a little bit like Russian. Wait, devět, deset, jedenáct, dvanáct, třináct, čtrnáct, patnáct, yada yada. Okay? So I'm showing off there for a bit. It's okay to show off. It's okay to show off and shine a little bit, right? But the moment I start getting tired, I notice it's like, oh crap, it switches to English. Why? Because that's what's automatic. Now, people are probably going to say, well, because English is your mother tongue. English is your first language, and no other language can be like your mother tongue. I don't believe that. I don't believe that. Personally, I don't. I grew up bilingual, right? Even if I'm not like so-called, like I don't know a lot of words in, let's say, Tagalog, like Filipino, like my parents' language, I can still communicate in it. I understand what they're saying, not just understand, but I get the why they're saying it. There's an underlying thing. So that's for another time. That's for another video. Okay. So, anyways, I was digressing there. So the point is, like, try that. When it comes to accents, and I'm not trying to compartmentalize this in sort of just the accents. I just wanted to relate it to how it's tied to racism, because it's like, I'm not saying this is to prevent racism. You can't prevent people from being racist. You can't. But what you can do is for yourself. That includes for the people who have also been racist, or if you once had this prejudice. Could I still do sometimes, like my Korean students? I have like this accent. I had prejudice around that, but I go in towards the body, and I kind of become aware that it's like, oh, there's not really racism, but there is. There's a bit of a feeling that I notice it's tied to, like, oh crap, Asians. It's like, oh crap, they don't know how to speak English. Like, why are they speaking English, right? And goes towards that judgment. It goes towards, and I can feel it right away. I can sense the energy in my heart. It gets heavier, and I go, and it's like I breathe through it. And I allow for the energy to just sit there. And I bring my awareness to the body, where it is. Where is the pain? Where is the heaviness? It's right here for me usually. Sometimes it's in the shoulder area. And it does take practice. It takes practice. If you want healing in this world, that's where it starts. Right? No time for it? Well, then that's what you'll get. If you believe that there's no time for something, you'll get no time. That's how energy works. That's how this universe works. You believe you don't have time for it. You don't believe that there's healing. Then there's no healing. You believe, right? And belief goes back down to also the subconscious, right? So you're probably wondering, what? How does this help? How does that changing your accent? It's not about changing your accent that's going to heal the word. It's not about that. It's about bringing awareness to why there's we have accents, why we don't need to correct accents, why accents will change over time anyways, and why all this, like, it's not about questioning it. It's not here. It's not actually here. It's here. It's here. It's here. You can't put into words what it's really rooted in the subconscious too. What it is, you can't put it into words. When you pick something up and it comes out basically automatically. First of all, it'll come out almost automatically and it'll change over time. But it's about exposure. When I say exposure, I mean this is where this is why I do the listening thing. Most of the stuff I do is listening. Like at least maybe 80%. I don't know, whatever the number, right? And the point isn't also about quantifying anything. We are so used to quantifying so many things. We're so used to using just the left brain that we've forgotten how to use the right brain. There's no balance anymore. You know what happens when there's imbalance? There's insecurities. What happens when there's imbalance? One over the other. What happens when there's imbalance? It's imbalance. It feels insecure, unstable. What happens when there's instability? We get insecure. The ego gets insecure. It's like, "Oh, I don't feel safe. Oh, fucking like, oh my god, it's fucking foreigners, Asians, like fucking white people." Right? See what I mean? You see what I mean? See what I mean? See what I mean? Goes rolls into negativity, right? So it's practicing away from that to separation back into wholeness. We were never really separate. We just believe that we're separate, right? I'm still working on my shit. Okay. So this is what I've just, to summarize, basically, this is what I've seen. This is what I've seen. This is what I've seen. This is my observation. This is what I've not only seen actually, but I've also experienced in myself, what I experienced to the people that I've helped, the students that I deal with. Yeah. Okay. So I hope that helps. So thanks for watching. I'll see you guys later. Bye.